So to begin with, I want to start with two very short quotes. And I think they're important to anyone who's going to design their own innovative mobile scenario. And the first one is from Albert Einstein, because when we're designing, we should make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. And the but no simpler is probably the important thing there. If we design something in the class, it should be as simple as possible, but not to break the key message or not to lose the key message that we're trying to convey. The second quote, before we go into the nuts and bolts of the ADDIE model, is really about what is design. And design is a whole lot more than what something looks like or even what something feels like. But for us as educators, for instructional designers or learning designers, it should be more about how it works. So not just how it looks and how it feels and how it operates, but how it works as well. So if I'm building an innovative mobile scenario, which might look at something like, I don't know, science experiments and videoing science experiments, how we use that is just as important as the cinematography, or how it'll work in the class. So I'm going to introduce the ADDIE model, and a lot of the theory or the ideas that will be on the next few slides have been taken from Branch's book in 2010, so it might be worth looking at that. So you'll see a lot of the ideas or a lot of the learnings on the next few slides are taken from his approach. So the ADDIE model is made up, it's an acronym from analyze, stage 2 is design, 3 is develop, 4 is implement, and 5 is to evaluate. And you can see it there, hopefully you can see it there on your screens. I purposely didn't put in the arrows when we were designing this slide. And the reason for that is a lot of the time you see arrows going from stage 1 to stage 2. And then when you complete stage 2, you have an output that informs on stage 3. And then when you develop something, and from that output, you're ready to go on to the implementation phase, or phase number 4. We purposely didn't put in the arrows here because one of the weaknesses, I suppose, with the ADDIE model is it's not always linear. And sometimes when we develop, whether it's a training module or a course or a learning object, it tends to be more organic. While all of these stages are hugely important and we shouldn't miss any of these stages, a lot of the time it can become muddled. And we'll talk to sometimes when there's some overlap between these. So if you Google the ADDIE model, or if you read some of the books on the ADDIE model or the ADDIE model, what you'll find is arrows going from one to the other. But I think the stages are a little bit more important than the sequence. So what we're going to try and do here now for the next few slides is basically to analyze, to look at the first stage or the analysis stage. And we're going to break up the next few slides here. We'll deconstruct the model stage by stage into concept. And then after we look at the concept, we'll look at what are the possible things that you would possibly be going through, or what are the stages you'll find yourself doing. So the concept here, the analysis stage, is what it tells us in the literature is to identify a problem, or probably identify a performance gap. In education, we're probably not looking for a problem, rather than we're looking to find to build on something. It doesn't always have to be a problem, I suppose. So this is the goals and objectives. So we're really trying to identify what we want to do. We want to identify the learning goals. We also want to identify who our learners are at this analysis stage. So for example, what do our students know? What do we want them to know at the end of using this resource as well? We probably need to identify as well the time frame. So basically, when do we want to produce and to have this learning artifact ready? The other thing we should, I suppose, really in the analysis stage, we're really looking at goals and objectives. And when we have them identified, it's probably time to go on to the design stage. Now, rather than looking at learning goals, we're changing from our goals now to objectives. So the concept at the design stage is probably to verify the desired performance and appropriate testing methods. Now, I'd imagine at the design stage, what we'll be looking at here is probably storyboarding, probably going through our scripts. We would probably look at the structure of what we want to design, and we might even try to put together a prototype. So if I was building a video scenarios here, we might look at writing our storyboard and possibly writing our VO. So that's the design stage. We also might be looking at putting together some kind of a guide or some kind of a scenario of what we'd like to build. Do you want to say anything about the design stage, Tony, before we go on to development?
Not at this point. We can probably talk about that with conjecture maps.
Okay. The third stage we just got it here. Oh, computer is just, here we are. The third stage is to develop. So what we're doing here is we're going to generate and validate the learning resource. So here's, I suppose, this is where we're really involved in content creation. So for a lot of you teachers who have an interest in using a digital or a mobile device or creating content, this would be where we get our hands dirty, I suppose. It's at this stage probably we'd probably record our voiceovers, we'd probably shoot our videos, we'd possibly put together our application if that's what we're going to do, and it's here that we create our deliverables, be that video, audio files, a course, a training session, or whatever it is we want to produce as part of this course. So I suppose an example of this might be something like my students at the moment are currently creating voice files to build language, what you call that in English, the tape tests?
Oral.
Yeah, oral tests. So it's at this, at the previous stage, when at the design stage, they probably wrote the scripts for their oral voice files, but the development stage is where they would record them and possibly put them into the course or a course. The next stage is to implement. So the implementation we really have to think about is what that implementation will look like. So when you create your learning scenario or when you design your learning scenario, what form will it take in that implementation? So for example, will it be online? Will we need a website? Will it be face-to-face? Will it be used in a classroom? Or will it be a training session? And it's usually here that we get to do a pilot, or this would be the pilot stage. So we get to implement whatever we have built and see how it might evolve or how it might work. We may also need some supplementary material for implementation. So for example, will there be facilitation guides, or will there be scripts for teachers if they are going to use this resource? And how will teachers get to access this resource? Will there be facilitation guides for the students? Will they need handouts or anything of that nature? So there's a lot more than the resource itself. We may need some supplementary resources, be that, facilitation guides is what we've mentioned a few minutes ago, for teachers or for the students. So implementation, really, we're talking about the pilot phase. The next stage in the ADDIE model is the evaluation stage. So the concept here is, how might we look at what we have created, and how might we, I suppose, make a better job of it, or how might we evaluate it? This is the data collection phase, and so we have to think about what tools we might use to evaluate our scenario or our product. And there's many different ways we could evaluate. We also have to figure out what we are going to evaluate. So if we look at the implementation stage right before, we might be observing how our resource is used by other teachers. We might also look at what students taught rather than just the teachers. Simple questions like, what went well? What didn't go so well? What could we have done better are questions you might ask students, but we'd have to look deeper at that with with teachers if that's what we are evaluating. So in short, many of the assignments, the short assignments as part of this MOOC, they talk directly to the different stages of the ADDIE model. There are some weaknesses with the ADDIE model. There's over 100 versions of the ADDIE model online. The version we have here, we'll share with you. This video will be shared with you as well. And I suppose the only big difference between what we have here and a lot of the ones you'll find online and in the research is that we've taken out the arrows. That it doesn't always have to be a circular process. That it could be more organic.